August 1943, tank factory in Detroit. The sound of hammers and welding echoes through the immense industrial complex. On the horizon, military structures rise against the grey sky. In the center of the complex, a group of officers watches intently. An engineer in an overcoat, his eyes marked by sleepless nights, follows every movement. The colonel shakes his head skeptically. Is this really going to work? It looks more like a lab experiment. The others agree. The engineer remains silent. He knows every detail of the revolutionary technology they have developed, but disbelief is widespread. The test begins and ends in failure. The colonel turns to the team. Go back to conventional weapons. This is a waste of time. The engineer observes the smoking wreckage. Deep down, he knows. The paradigm has changed. Only the top management hasn't realized it yet. What they didn't understand was that, at that moment, they were witnessing the birth of a new era. The journey had begun 5 years earlier, in 1937. While Europe was heading towards the abyss, a small team of visionaries was working in the shadows. The specifications were impressive. A propulsion system that defied the limits of known physics. Surgical precision capable of hitting targets kilometers away, and a structural resistance that seemed impossible for the time. On the drawing boards, it was the ultimate weapon. But they faced a huge obstacle: bureaucracy. The commanders, clinging to traditional doctrines, viewed innovation as a threat. Budgets were cut, deadlines missed, tests sabotaged. The creators asked for funding. The answer was always the same: no budget. Nevertheless, they persisted. Dr. Richardson, the project leader, defended its creation with almost religious fervor. The future will come whether they are prepared or not, he prophesied. This technology will redefine what is possible in warfare. When the first prototype was demonstrated, skepticism was faster than results were obtained. Stability problems, excessive complexity, a series of failures. In the initial trials, it couldn't even complete the most basic tasks. No one could have imagined that this apparent disaster carried the seeds of victory. The world had plunged into total war. The battlefronts were bleeding. The enemy advanced relentlessly. And the new units, equipped with they called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed the war, received their baptismal order: immediate engagement. Reality, however, had a cruel surprise in store. The technology still carried the same flaws as in the initial tests. Without the necessary adjustments, without the crucial refinements. In the first major battle, they called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed the war and showed his potential to fail. All systems failed simultaneously. Implementation problems, the superiors tried to justify. New engagement, perfect performance in tests. Complete disaster in the field. Zero result. The field reports were devastating. Unit inoperable under real-world conditions. Systems collapsed under pressure. Unsuitable for combat. Within weeks, dozens of reports confirmed the pattern. Equipment that failed at the critical moment, software that crashed, hardware that couldn't withstand the stress. Commanders sometimes gave up on using the new technology, preferring the comfort of the familiar. The enemy, informed of the failures, openly mocked them. Technology doesn't replace courage, they proclaimed. And for a time they were right, but genius often comes from where you least expect it. In 1944, after countless frustrations, a young lieutenant, Anna Schmidt, a systems specialist, decided to confront the establishment. She rejected conventional explanations. It's not the technology that fails, it's the implementations. Bypassing the chain of command, Schmidt conducted independent analyses. He disassembled entire systems, component by component, like an obsessed watchmaker. And he discovered the hidden truth. The systems were operating 40% below nominal capacity. Human-machine interfaces were counterintuitive, and the maintenance protocols were inadequate for field use. Schmidt sent a report directly to the General Command. Our equipment is being underutilized. We are fighting with our hands tied. The answer was predictable. Established procedures must be followed. Stay in line. But the users in the field had already lost patience. They began developing their own solutions, modifying equipment, creating alternative procedures, and sharing discoveries. So at the Battle of Silent Valley, a unit modified its tactics. which they called him crazy but whose impossible tactics changed the war, following Schmidt's suggestions. 11 engagements. 10 conventional tests failed. The 11th, with the modifications, worked perfectly and changed the course of the confrontation. Silence fell over the headquarters. The evidence was irrefutable. The problem was never the technology. It was the resistance to change. The High Command finally issued the order: review all protocols, adapt the systems to the actual needs, or the giant would awaken. What followed went down in military history as the transformation. From 1945 onwards, the systems, properly configured, properly operated, transformed every equipped unit into an unstoppable force. They called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed warfare. The accounts of the battles have become legends: complete interception of enemy forces, no Allied casualties, operational efficiency, 98%. Opponents who previously mocked the useless technology now called it the Steel Demon, the mechanized angel of death. The characteristic roar of the engines mingled with the thunder of the explosions, a symphony of destruction that echoed through enemy lines. Position after position, division after division, the enemy began to retreat. Between 1945 and 1946, more than 70% of the opposing forces were neutralized. Elite units disappeared during the night. Fear gripped even the most hardened veterans. A prisoner of war would later confess, "We had no way to prepare. It was like fighting ghosts. They saw everything, they knew everything." The same sound that once provoked scornful laughter now heralded the end. The impact of "they called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed the war" transcended field reports. He redefined military doctrine itself. Previously, technology was seen as support, auxiliary tools, supporting equipment. After "they called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed the war," he became the center of strategy, capable of dictating the terms of engagement. The learning process was painful, but transformative. The armed forces created new research centers, established innovation protocols, and for the first time admitted adaptation is more important than tradition. The engineers who were once ridiculed have become strategic advisors. Richardson, the man who confronted institutional skepticism, was summoned to the Pentagon. He rarely spoke. It simply presented the numbers: 15,000 missions, 40,200 confirmed successes. A technology initially rejected, now it was the backbone of the defense. But what is the cost? 3 years of avoidable defeats, lives lost due to stubbornness, wasted opportunities. The lesson, however, remained: institutional arrogance is more dangerous than any enemy. September 1946, the peace agreements are signed. In the former enemy lines, abandoned equipment rusts in the open air. At Allied bases, the systems "they called him crazy, but his impossible tactic changed the war" return for maintenance, unsung heroes. A historian asks a veteran, "What really ended the conflict?" She replies without hesitation, "The technology we almost rejected." And I smiled, with the bitter wisdom of someone who has seen the price of resisting change. Those who once ridiculed innovation, calling it wasteful and fantasy, now place medals on the coffins of those who struggled to prove their worth. They laughed when they saw her for the first time. They stopped laughing when they realized that the sound of their laughter was drowned out by the roar of obsolescence. The future spoke, and the battlefield would never be the same again. They called him crazy, but his impossible tactic changed the war. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a mirror that reflected our relationship with innovation. He demonstrated that progress without a progressive mindset is useless, and that technology without vision is merely a gadget. In the contemporary era, where every breakthrough is surpassed in months, the lesson of "they called him crazy, but his impossible tactics changed the war" still resonates. There is no evolution without adaptation. Because often, the future arrives disguised as a problem.